Greetings and salutations. Welcome to my Linux Mint desktop. In this video, we're going to talk about removing old configuration files from kernels that were automatically installed on Ubuntu-based systems. And we're also going to talk about how I came up with an update for the up script, which I've had available for download for quite some time, and a lot of folks use that. This all started because a fellow named Bill W., who's been watching the channel for a long time, sent me a note earlier this week, and he asked me if there was a quick and easy way to remove old configuration files for kernels that had been automatically removed from Ubuntu. Well, I didn't know it was leaving configuration files behind. This was totally off my radar. So I went off and did some research, and I came up with a way to do that in the terminal, and just kind of walked my way through the problem, and I ended up adding it to up. And let me just walk you through this. It's the easiest way to explain it. Now, before we get into things, a couple of things I want to say. The picture you see on your screen is Silver Lake Harbor at Ocracoke Island, North Carolina. Every time I use this background, people ask about it. It's available on easylinux.com. You can download it. So let's get that out of the way right up front. This is advanced Linux we're talking about here. Leaving old configuration files behind doesn't hurt anything on an Ubuntu system or a Linux Mint system. So if you're just starting out and this is over your head, this is not something you have to worry about. This is just a little tidying up and a little housekeeping for people who are kind of manic about this sort of thing. If you have a whole bunch of systems that you're maintaining and they're long-running systems that have been upgraded in place, you may run into an issue where you have so many configuration files that something gets confused or whatever, but that would be a very way out there situation. This usually doesn't hurt anything, and the system's going to get updated, and that stuff's going to get blown out anyway at some point. But leaving old kernels installed can cause you heartache big time, and we'll talk about that as we roll through it. So if you don't understand what's going on here, if you're a newbie, I encourage you to stick around because you might learn something. But for those of you who are more advanced, this is going to be pretty basic stuff, I think. So since we are running Linux Mint, we have access to the lovely Linux Mint kernel tool, which we're going to use to look at how kernels work in Ubuntu-based systems. So in Ubuntu, and we need to look at the LTS kernel because we're running Linux Mint 20, which is based on Ubuntu 20.04. So that right now is the, what is that? The 5.4 kernel. The way it works is periodically, about once a month or so, you will get a new kernel update. And that's got all your security fixes and whatever you need. It's how Linux stays secure. It's the reason why you don't have to run any sort of antivirus in Linux, because the kernel takes care of all this for you. The problem is that as a new kernel is added, old kernels are left behind. Currently on my Linux Mint system, you'll see that we have one active kernel, that's the latest, and then we have one that's installed, which is the version before the latest kernel. That's as it should be. If something goes wrong with the current kernel, which is active right there, I can boot this system into the one before it to address that issue. Could be anything, a hardware problem, could crop up, you could have a driver issue, who knows. This gives you a way to boot your system up and fix the problem. So it's always a good idea to have at least 2 kernels installed. If you have more than that, then you start running into problems where kernel updates are slower because every time that it has to run something like, like DKMS, it's doing it for all of these installed kernels. You can run into a situation where if your boot directory is in its own little partition on a drive, you could fill that up. That has happened to people. And I have talked to people over the years that have asked me why it is that they're getting a message saying they can't install the latest kernel because there's no disk space. Well, that's usually what's going on there. So it became obvious after a while that there had to be some sort of automatic way to remove these kernels. Because years ago, Ubuntu didn't do that. What it did was just left them there, and you as the user had to know that you had to go do that, and then you had to do that manually. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment here. But then they decided, well, it would probably be a good idea to have an automatic way to go. So these days, if you type in sudo apt auto remove at a terminal on any Ubuntu-based system, it will actually go and look for packages that don't need to be there, whether they're kernels or not. And it considers everything before the last kernel, before the current one, as not necessary. So you see that right there. So that would be these two that we're talking about. Now, the automatic function is leaving configuration files behind. It's removing the kernels themselves, but it's leaving the configuration files. They don't take up a great deal of space, and as I said earlier, they won't really harm your system, but it is kind of messy. So the way to deal with that, we'll do it pointy-clicky way here, is to use a program called Synaptic. Those of you who run Ubuntu proper may not know about Synaptic Package Manager simply because of the fact that Ubuntu stopped shipping this by default years ago. They switched over to their own software center. At first that's what it was called, and then now these days they use software. Synaptic is a very old application, and it works on any system that uses apt to control the packages. So if you have the apt package manager on Debian, Ubuntu, whatever, this should work just fine, and it's available for install. There is one Linux distribution, PC Linux OS, that actually uses Synaptic Package Manager, but it does it with RPM packages, which is really weird. So what we want to do is we'll do a search for Linux image. And this will show us pretty much anything that is related to the kernel that's either not installed, is installed, whatever. And you could go through here and you could automatically, rather you could find the ones that were installed, you could remove them manually, not automatically. What we want to do is look at the status. And what we want to look at is not installed, but you see where it says residual there? That's any kernel that has been removed, but there are residual files on the system. And that can be true of any package, not just a kernel. And then what we could do is we could go in here and we could mark for complete removal, which will purge all of those files off the system. Now the kernel itself is gone, the installation package and everything. It's just the old files there. So if we would click apply, that would go and do that. But we're not going to do it that way. Now you can imagine if you have a long-running system that's had many kernels installed and removed over time, this could be a big pain. This system's only got 2, and I did that manually just so I could make the video. Because, of course, what I did was when I figured out how to do it, I went and did it and didn't think about making a video. And so all of my systems around here are now nice and clean. So I had to actually go back and install kernels and remove them to make this do this. All right, so we get out of Synaptic Package Manager there. And what we need to do is switch over to a terminal. Okay, we're right here, so this would be Workspace 3. And we'll use this command to do exactly the same thing we just did with Synaptic, and that is we're going to use dpkg right here, which is what handles the packages, and we're going to have it give us a list, and I use the long option there, and we're going to grep Linux image. So we're taking the output of list and we're piping it into the grep command, which will parse through all of that and just show us everything that says Linux image. A lot going on with just a few little commands there. It's one of the cool things about Linux. Anyway, let's go ahead and do it. And you will see that right now it is telling us that we have 2 packages right up top here, 5.4.0-72 and -73 that are marked RC. And that's telling us that the package is gone, but the configuration files are there. So it knows about it. apt knows about it. dpkg knows about it. Now we need a command so we can remove all of this at once. You could go through and do that manually and just put a purge at the end of it, but that would be a bit of a problem, and it would take some time too. So what we're going to do is jump over here, and we're going to look at this lovely command which I dug up. This is the command that will go and search for anything marked RC on the package list, and it will go ahead and uninstall it. So we have sudo apt remove, and then we use the purge flag there, and then all of this right here is how we get our list of packages that are marked RC. So you notice we have a $sign here, which is going to create a variable that we're going to put in memory. And then we have parentheses. Everything within this parentheses, if you put a command in here, the output of that command becomes the variable which this command is going to work on. So in our case, we're doing exactly the same command that you saw before, dpkg, and we're using the list option. In this case, we're using the short option, just L, and then we're piping that into grep. And this time around, instead of looking for Linux image, we're telling it to look for RC. I have to be honest with you, I'm not really sure what the caret character there is doing, because I copied and pasted this. So that one was a little over my head. I could probably go figure that out, but I didn't bother because somebody else came up with the command. I just used their stuff. Then we're going to take grep RC, and we're filtering all the packages there, and then we're going to pipe it yet again into awk. Awk is an archaic computer language that is available on just about any Linux or Unix system, because there are still a few commands in awk that other interpreters like bash don't do very well. So we're actually calling up a whole different command line interpreter to just process the results from grep and put them in a format that the command can use, basically a list. So that's what that does. It's really that simple. So if I would copy this command here, I'll go to copy, switch over to my terminal here, and I paste that in, and we're going to run it. It asks for a password, and you see it goes out and it finds that there are some things in there that need to get removed. And if I would click yes, it would go ahead and do that, but it would only remove the ones, it would only remove the ones that were marked RC. It's not going to auto-remove it. As a matter of fact, it's asking me to auto-remove it. So I'm going to say no, because we're not going to do that quite yet, because I want to show you how that works with the up script, which we will talk about next. So if we ran that, that would go ahead and take care of that. So now let us talk about this command a little bit more. This is rather cumbersome. You're not going to want to type this in every time you want to clear out your system and get rid of your old configuration files, right? So you would want to use this in a script of some sort. And that would be like a really tiny script, to use it like an alias or something like that. Or you could incorporate it into a bigger script, which is what I have done. By the way, you're probably looking at this and saying, well, wouldn't there be an option in auto remove to do this when you remove the stuff? The answer is probably yes. I poked around at it for a while and I could not find a solution. And if it did purge, which means to remove the package and the configuration files, it was doing things that were currently not marked RC. So that was the difficult part to figure out. So it's probably better to go ahead and run auto remove first and then run this command. So let's go in here and look at the up script. So this is where this ended up landing. Up is a script which I wrote, I don't know, it's been probably about 3, maybe even 4 years ago now, when I was doing a lot of videos about teaching people how to program bash, how to write bash scripts and that sort of thing. And what I was trying to illustrate was the concept of functions in a program. A function is just a set of commands that you want the system to load into memory and use if the program asks for it. So, for instance, we have the update function here, and all of this bracketry and parentheses and stuff like that. It just tells it, take all this stuff and throw it in memory. Don't actually run it. So it runs sudo apt update and then sudo apt full upgrade, and that upgrades the system. Every time I show this, people ask about this part here, the two Y's. Okay, the -y or -y or whatever you want to call that, that tells the apt command not to stop and ask like it just did when I showed you the auto remove. This just tells it to keep going. The second Y there is to tell it to keep going even if it comes across something that it wants to ask you about after it starts executing. This is how you can completely automate this in a script, because the last thing that you want it to do is hang up in a script, especially one that would be run automatically. So that's why there are two Y's. It's basically, yes, I want you to do it. Yes, I really want you to do it. And I've had several people ask me about that, and I can't seem to find the documentation. I ran across that a long time ago, and it saved my butt in a situation where something was goofing up, and nowadays I can't point you to where I learned about it, but it still works, so it's fine. So what I have done here is just simply added the sudo apt remove, this same thing that we just did, here to the up script, I got it right, and that is in the remove function. So how does this actually work? Well, you have a bunch of functions, and the script starts, and it loads all this stuff into memory, and depending on what you type, it loads different sets of functions and runs them. So the first one here, if it's the name of the program up, and then you give it clean as an argument, -- clean there, then it will update the system, it'll run remove, it'll run clean, which is auto cleaning the system, and then it will leave, which is the function to exit. And same thing, if I type remove, it's going to update remove, and then it's going to exit the program. I have a script that automatically cleans out orphaned packages in the apt cache once a month that I run in Anacron, and it takes care of it. Those are packages that you can no longer install, but they're sitting on the system for whatever reason. Anything that you can download and install, it hangs on to. You can also do another command with apt where it just basically blows out the entire cache, but I'm not big on that. I think caches are a good thing. Like if you needed to reinstall a file for some reason, a package, and you didn't have internet access, well, if it's in the cache, it'll do it because it'll be able to find it. Whereas if you didn't have the cache up and running, well, guess what? Or if it was cleaned out, it wouldn't be there. So anyway, you get the idea. That's how that works. And we'll take a look at where you can get up. So we're at easylinux.com, and we're looking at the bash scripts page. Let me click there. If you scroll down, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff I have available for you. If you're new to the channel, you don't know this, you might want to go check this out. These are for, I guess, moderately advanced Linux users, because you have to pretty much install them manually. But it's not too hard, and I have instructions included. There's the backup programs. There's CYA, which is like a, if you know what time shift is, that's a program that does that in systems that don't have desktops, so it works great on servers. And then we have up, which is what we're talking about here. There's a video that shows you how it works, and you can download it directly from the GitHub page. And you can go to the GitHub page right here. I'm going to put links in the video, all of it, EasyLinux in the description rather for the video. I'm going to put the links for GitHub and the page that this is on, so if you want to go check that out. I have a whole bunch of stuff up on GitHub right now, and it's all pretty well explained here. If you'd like to check out the wallpapers I have for download, I mentioned that earlier, just click on wallpapers here and then open them up in your browser and then right click to download the image. It's just that simple, and these are pictures that I've had for many years and used in videos as backgrounds, stuff that people have asked about where do I get that. So if you want to check that out, it's at easylinux.com. And there's a few here. I think there's about 20 of them. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. We're going to actually run the program, so I'm going to use Control-L to clear our big terminal here. By the way, little aside, when you're making YouTube videos and you're showing people how to do things in computers, use the biggest print you can. I was watching a relatively well-known Linux YouTuber. He was showing an install in a virtual machine of Pop! OS with the Cosmic Desktop. So if you've seen that video, you know who I'm talking about. And I was watching it on a 60-inch television screen, and I could not see what he was doing. Make your print really big. Not everybody has high-definition devices and perfect vision. So anyway, what we're going to do to wrap things up is just run this real quick. And we'll see that in action. Now, you might see some errors or some other gobbledygook pop up here simply because to be able to demonstrate this, I had to go and manually install old kernels and kind of jack the system to get it to do it. Because, of course, when I was testing this, I didn't think about the video, and I left every single one of my systems nice and squeaky clean. So I had to recreate by installing the kernels and then manually removing them. And anyway, we'll see what it does. So this is what it looks like. It didn't ask me for a password because I had already given it a password earlier. And it goes out. It's going to check and see if there's any packages that need updates. There are none. We got some things to remove here. It just ran that. And now it's going to remove this stuff. And it's done. That's it. Really super quick and simple. And if you have a whole lot of old packages with, or rather just old configuration files from packages that have been installed, you get a really long list, and it'll take it quite some time. So that's it for this video, except for the comments that I have about the video I had posted, the Windows 11 video, The Nightmare is Just About to Begin. That video has gotten like 30-something thousand views on it since last Friday, which is absolutely amazing. And I want to thank everybody who clicked on that video and watched it. I'm sure that this video is going to get a lot less views, but if you were one of them, thank you. I found the comments to be really insightful and interesting, and they ranged from the very thoughtful to the completely idiotic. And the other thing was, a lot of people posted comments, well, I won't say a lot, but quite a few posted comments where they just flat out lied about something. About what they installed and where they installed it and how they had... Oh, it was very strange. It's just weird, all the different reactions that video has gotten. And, of course, since then, Microsoft has been doing a lot of backpedaling, trying to figure out a way to quell the crap storm that's headed their way because of their announcement about only supporting the latest hardware. So we'll see how that works out over time. I was just really shocked that many people responded to that video. It was kind of amazing. So maybe I ought to turn my attention back toward Linux a little bit more. I had kind of gotten away from that for a while because even I can't talk tonight. I'm sorry, but anyway, I had gotten away from that for a while just because I wasn't feeling the love from the community. But lately, there's an uptick. So maybe that could be in a reaction to Windows 11. Maybe I was wrong about that, you know. If you hadn't seen that, go dig the rant. It's I just sort of ranted for 12 minutes. Anyway, I'm done. Thanks for watching. If you download the latest version of Up, tell me how it goes for you in the comments. I certainly would appreciate it. We'll talk again soon.